Hi, everyone. It's Banshee, part of the TFT Tarot for Today, Divine Dabblings with Oberon and Banshee team. And today I am here to premiere my new video series, Banshee's Soul Stories. You've seen me advertise it on Facebook and Twitter, and basically the concept revolves around the fact that, we all experience these things, signs, synchronicities, messages from spirit. My stories are not unique, in that I believe we all have these kinds of occurrences happen to us. But sometimes people don't recognize them in their everyday lives and how common they can be and are. I hope by my sharing my stories with you that you might be interested in sharing your stories with others as well. There's a lot to learn from these stories. I think they were meant to be shared. And the story that I'm going to share with you today is very near and dear to my heart. It's kind of tragic, yet beautiful in its own way, and it does have, in my mind anyway, a happy ending. And so, I feel that we should all share these types of experiences with each other. We who are in the magical community, tarot practitioners or magical practitioners, we are used to these kinds of signals from the ether or from spirit, from another realm. But others may not be. And so this may be new to some people. Maybe you've heard about them, but, since you haven't experienced them, you're not sure what to make of it all. Well, to be honest with you, after experiencing many of them myself, I'm not either. So that's why I also am sharing them with you. I'd love to hear your feedback on this story and the other stories that I will be sharing with you to see what you think of the whole thing. And today's story, I'd like to call it Sisters Together, or The Sisters That Stay Together, ... I'll let you finish that part of the title because I'm not exactly sure how to finish it. Maybe it should be The Sisters That Stay Together, Remain Together. And this story revolves around my mother and her sister. And they were very close. They came from a family of 10. 5 of them were sisters, 5 brothers. And the sisters were very close together in life, but my mother and this particular aunt of mine were very, very close. They spent a lot of time together, and they outlived all of their siblings. And so, at the end, they were support for each other. And so we're going to go to the year 1960s. Well, before I do that, let me show you a few pictures. Let me do that first. This is a picture of my mother. And if I can find the right one, this is a very younger picture. Well, not too much younger, but a picture of my Aunt Mary, my mother's sister. Here's a picture of the two of them together on one of their, I believe it was a senior trip. And here's a picture I like to show only because my aunt has these almost knee-high boots on. I'm trying to think of what era this was, the 70s, the 60s. I'm not sure. The picture is not dated. So they were quite the pair. They had a lot of fun together. And like a lot of us, people who will be watching this, they were interested in the paranormal. They were interested in spiritual matters. They were very religious Catholics. But they dabbled in not tarot cards, but divination by regular deck of playing cards. And they went to see psychics and things like that. They interpreted dreams, all of that kind of stuff. So we're going to flash forward to the year 1997, which was a rather difficult year for me. This was the year that I lost my aunt. And for my part, I want to say that my aunt was like the big sister I never had. I had a brother. I didn't have a sister. And me and my aunt were very close as well. I loved her to death. And so it should be as no surprise that I'm the one that found her lying on her floor one night, November 13th, a Thursday, in 1997, she passed away of a massive heart attack. It was one of the most difficult moments of my life that I keep reliving in my head. And one of the things that I find profound about that, I'm not going to get into this today, one part of this today, because I'm going to have a special segment video on at some point on dreams and dream interpretation. And I did have a dream before she passed that may have clued me in that something wasn't right. Well, at any rate, the night she passed, she was asking me to go to the store for them and get some milk, different things they needed. I was kind of watching over my mom and my aunt. See, at that time, me and my aunt and my family were caretaking my mother, who was still living independently, but was getting deeper and deeper into the throes of Alzheimer's disease. So it really took a team to try to keep her together. She was very fiercely independent, did not want to give up her home, did not want to move in with anybody else, did not want anybody staying with her. So it made things kind of difficult at times. And so we all worked as a team on this. And so, of course, I told my aunt I would go shopping, but I was busy and it would be a little bit later that evening. And she told me, well, you know, it's going to snow and it's so windy out. And it was very windy out that night. And I said, you know, it's November 13th. If anything, it's just going to be a dusting. We're not going to get much snow. Considering what happened this year, I should have known better than to say that. But at any rate, you know, I said, okay, I will be by. And I hung up. And then we went out to dinner, me and Oberon. And then I went to do the shopping. And I tried to call my aunt from the store and I got no answer. And I figured, okay, she was doing her laundry. She's probably in the basement. I'll go drop off my mom's first, which I did. And then I called my aunt from there and there was no answer from there either. So when I went to her house, I knocked on the door a few times and loud, and then I realized something must be really wrong. She would answer this door, and so I was getting nervous. I was worried maybe somebody was in the house, something was wrong. So I took the key I had, because we had a key in case she fell, and opened the door, and I found her. You know, she was already dead, and I called the ambulance and everything. And I have to say, you know, I was teasing my aunt about the snow, but she was right. By the time the ambulance left and my brother came by to be with me and my family, snow had fallen and there was a nice dusting on the ground of snow. And when I look back at her death, I can't help but think to myself that she really pushed me to go shopping that night. She called me a couple of times, actually, during that day, and I don't know, I have this sense, you know, of course I have no proof. Nobody ever has real proof of these things. But I really feel that sometimes when people are dying, they know they're dying. They know something's wrong, And I just think that my aunt wanted me to find her and wanted me to find her right away that night. She didn't want to be laying for 24 hours. She didn't want, my mom to be worrying about her. She, if you could plan it, you could plan your death and how you're going to stage it. I almost want to believe that she did that. And hey, maybe that's wishful feeling on my part because it really tore me up terribly. It took me a long time to recover from, the whole thing. And so basically, my mother started going through the Alzheimer's syndrome at a quicker pace. She spent a little bit more time in her home. We tried to do the best we could to keep her there. Finally, my brother took her in for a while. We had to fight her tooth and nail to do that. And at some point when she fell in his house, we decided we had to move her into assisted living. And then from assisted living, she moved into a nursing home. The process just kept going. And by the way, just as an aside, my mother went through a 15-year battle with Alzheimer's disease. So this was no short picnic, no easy thing cross to bear for all of us, including her. And so basically, also my aunt and my mom were about 8 years apart in age. And like I said, they were just so close. Now, we're going to flash forward to the year 2002. It was November of 2002, and I got a call from my brother, and he told me that the nursing home was calling in hospice care. And basically, they thought that she was going to be, that she was failing more, and they wanted hospice care to come in and start taking care of her. Well, they did. And I don't know how much everybody knows about hospice care, but from what I understand, unless I'm wrong and things have changed, hospice care usually comes at the end of your life and towards the end, like maybe when you have a year or less left. Well, so the months went on, and my mom kept progressing through the disease. Come to August, where she stopped talking completely to us. She was just, we would be there. She would be alert sometimes, but not saying anything at all. We'd have to carry on conversation with her. And the last time she said anything at all was like about mid-August, and that was it. And then she started sleeping more, and she was in a sleep state most of the time. And so this went on. And then finally, November of 2003, let's see, we were 2002, yes, 2003. Don't want to lose my my dates here. I get a call from hospice, and they tell me that they think that my mother is going to pass soon, and they wanted to let me know so I would have time to prepare and say my goodbyes. And I said to them, oh, gee, I said, well, how long do I have? And she said, well, and this is exactly what they said. They said, this is your mother we're talking about here. And she's defied all expectations so far. And it's true, because basically it was already another November. She had almost gone a complete year in hospice care. And one thing I'll say about my mother is she was always afraid of death and dying. She was afraid to die. And this was before her Alzheimer's had set in. It was something that I'd known even from her younger years. And so I think she was really trying to fight death. I really do. And so when they told me that, it was kind of no surprise to me in a way. And, it does show the strength and how strong she truly was. And that's what they told me. She's just such an incredibly strong woman. And she has survived this far. So I hung up the phone with them, and I thought about it. And it didn't take me long for suddenly it just to click in my mind that, oh my gosh, Mary is going to bring her home. She's going to convince her it's time. She's going to pass on Mary's death day, November 13th. And so I told my husband this. I told my son this. I might have mentioned it to my brother. I'm not sure. But I was convinced that this was going to happen, that Mary was going to come back and take her home. So the days went on, and it was about, I've got my little cheat sheet here so I get my dates right. So it was Sunday, November 9th, that I went to the nursing home, and almost every day I had gone in that period from the beginning of November, she was never awake for me. I never had any idea if she could hear what I was saying. I'd like to believe she could, but of course, her mind already was so far gone from the Alzheimer's disease, I really wasn't sure how much of her was left anymore. So there was a lot on my mind, churning in my mind as I went in there on that Sunday, November 9th. And I had brought with me this case. This is St. Teresa. As I said, they were all very good Catholics in my family. And I wanted to do a rosary for her because they loved the rosary, her and my aunt. And I felt it was the right thing to do. And I was kind of hoping when I got there that day that maybe she'd be awake for me. But of course she wasn't. I was really, I don't know, so many thoughts were churning in my mind as I was starting to get started. I had a lot of deep, dark thoughts that day. It gets to the point where you've gone through this for so long, you don't know anymore if the pain that you're feeling and the tears are really, self for yourself or for your mom or for both. Of course, I felt terrible about what she was going through and how she had to die that way without knowing we were there with her. It was really eating at me. And of course, I felt sorry for myself because I wanted closure. I wanted her to know we are here. We are here for you. We have been here all along. And with Alzheimer's disease, closure is not an easy thing to find. So I had this rosary, and I started saying the rosary for her. And I started going through the Our Fathers and the Hail Marys and the Our Fathers and the Hail Marys. And as you start going through it, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee, and you keep going through it, chant, chant, chant. It's almost like that. It's almost as if, for all of us who have worked magic and ritual, it's like you are chanting, and that's what it started to get to me. I started to feel something happening, and I just started to feel something welling up in me, and some of those bad feelings, the anger. I was so upset, I was so angry, and I was so sad that all of a sudden it just all flooded out. I started crying my eyes out. I started weeping loudly. Everything was coming out in that moment. I was sobbing almost hysterically in this nursing home room. It's ironic to me that not a nurse or nobody came in to check up on me at all. I'm surprised, because I'm sure people must have heard me. So I was blotting my eyes. I was trying to contain myself, and I couldn't. I had stopped in the middle of the rosary and just was miserable. And then all of a sudden, something happened. Something happened, and I looked up, and all of a sudden, it's like the entire room was bathed in this yellow light. It wasn't a blinding light, anything like that. It almost felt like it had a warmth to it. I felt warmth around me and this beautiful yellow light. And I was just transfixed by this. And then I thought to myself, oh, now I did it. I'm giving myself a stroke, That was the one thing I thought is, what did I do? Because the light just didn't go away. And I started to catch my breath. I started to calm down, and I started to feel this total sense of peace and tranquility. I felt very calm. I felt completely different than I did like just a few minutes before. And suddenly I said to myself, everything is going to be all right. Everything is going to work out. Everything is fine. And with that, I picked up the rosary again, and I continued on, and I finished my rosary, and I left. And I went home, and one thing that I didn't mention is when I was talking to the hospice people, I asked them, well, will somebody tell me when she's getting close? And they said to me, the nursing home people are very good at this, and they put a lamp in your mother's room, and if they think she's going to die within 48 hours, you'll notice the lamp will be lit. They turn the lamp on, 48 hours before they think somebody is going to pass. Well, the lamp hadn't been on all this time, and I went in Monday, and the lamp was not on. And now Monday was November 10th, and so she was fast asleep again, and I just sat with her, and I talked with her, and excuse me, and I took it all in stride. I felt so much at peace. I knew Mary was going to come for her. It was all going to be okay. And then November 11th rolled around Tuesday. And on that day, I walked in the room, and the first thing I noticed was the lamp was lit. And I said, the lamp is lit. That means she's going to die within 48 hours. And then I looked at her, and my jaw just dropped. She was wide awake. She was wide awake for the first time in months, and her head was going like this. She was looking around the room, and as I walked in and walked up to her, she stopped and looked at me. So I felt like I was making some kind of connection. And I said, Mom, I'm here. I'm here with you. It's Barb. I'm here with you. And I touched her arm. I held her arm. And she was actually trying to mouth words for the first time since August. And so she was kind of going like this. And I was so taken by this that I remembered I brought my rosary back with me that day. And so I took it out of the case again and I told my mom, Mom, I'm going to do a rosary for you. And don't worry, you don't have to talk. I'll do it all. You can just pray with me and I'll do the rosary with you. And she was literally like mouthing words the whole time as I went through the whole rosary and with her. And she was awake the whole time I was there. It was such a blessing, and it was so amazing. I felt like I had my closure. I felt I connected and that I had some closure. You know, there's just not a lot of good about the process, and I know people out there know what I'm talking about who have experienced Alzheimer's disease in their family. There is just not a lot of good closure, but this was just so amazing. And I thought about that light. I thought about what happened to me on Sunday. And I know that something happened. And that whether it was Mary, whether it was some other higher powers, people, something came through. Whether it was my own power manifest, because let me tell you, I threw it out there that day. That's why I would like opinions from others on this. So basically, I got through that and I left the room and I called my brother right away and I said, you better get here now. And he said, why? And I said, the lamp is lit and she's wide awake. And he said, she's wide awake? And I said, yes, she's been wide awake the whole time I was here. I did a rosary with her. So come on down and, see her today. And he did, of course. And so then Wednesday, November 12th rolled around. November 12th, by the way, is my late father's birthday. He was born on November 12th. So that was something I remember November 12th by. And I went there again. I could only spend a brief time with her because I had something else to do that night. And I said, my goodbye to her that night. And but the thing about November 12th was when I was at work that day, I put everything in order. I finished up some assignments I had pending. I was just trying to tidy everything up because I knew I wasn't going to be in the next day, November 13th. I was not going to be in. And so I told my boss, I said, I'll let you know about funeral arrangements, but I think she's going to die tomorrow and I probably am not coming in. And she said, well, you let me know and you take care and do let us know. And she felt so bad for me. And I said, well, we'll see what happens. And so I went home that night and after visiting her and all of that. And I have to tell you, the wind was howling that night like I have never heard before. Well, I've heard it before, but I hadn't heard in a long time. Trees were just whipping around and we had a loose gutter and it was just rattling against the house. I was trying to sleep that night, finding it very difficult with all that noise and racket, and the fact that it was on my mind, that I was going to be saying goodbye to my mother tomorrow and that Mary was taking her home. And the winds kept whipping and the noise kept going on all through till morning. And then my alarm went off. And I shut off my alarm and thinking, well, I can't believe I haven't gotten a call yet. And so I take a quick shower and I eat a little breakfast. And then I'm going upstairs thinking I'm getting my clothes. And I'm like, am I getting dressed for work? I really didn't think I was doing that today. This is so strange. And within like 10 minutes of saying that, I got the call from my sister-in-law who told me to get down as soon as I could. They were already at the nursing home and they said that she was probably going to pass soon. So it was a bit of a drive to the nursing home and we were battling wind all the way there. And we get there and I did get there in time to see her pass. She was breathing like more labored. There was more intervals between her breaths. I was, it's when you're in that kind of scenario, at least me, I was watching very intently and I was staying close to her as close as I could. I talked to her, I'd rub her cheek or her hands. And then at one point, a tear rolled down the corner of her eye and down her cheek. And I saw her take one final breath and it was over. Her long battle and fight with Alzheimer's disease ended that day, Thursday, November 13th, 6 years to the day that my aunt passed away, and they both passed away on Thursdays. It's really uncanny to me how this happened, and beautiful. Beautiful ending to the story. And I'd like to say it ends right here and now, but I've got a little bit more to tell you about that day and about some things that happened after that. But so we had to go to the funeral home that day. And when we were there, we were talking to the funeral director in his office, and we were making different types of arrangements. And then he wanted to take us back to see, caskets so we could choose one for my mom. And as we were doing that, he said, it's going to be a little bit darker in here than usual. We apologize for this. He says, we've had a power outage. And I just said, a power outage? I said, well, I live in Hamtramck, because this is where we were. That was my mom's hometown, too. I live in Hamtramck. Is the city out? And he said, no. It's just our block. And me and my brother, we just kind of looked at each other. And I'm just like, I'm thinking about all the wind. I'm thinking about everything that day. And I just said to my brother, I said, man, he left us alone, the funeral director, for a few minutes. And I said, she fought this thing tooth and nail. She doesn't want us here looking at her casket. She doesn't want to be dead. I said, she never did. And I said, so it's no wonder to me that the wind has been wailing and the funeral home that we chose for her has no power. So uncanny and so typical of my mom. So that is just my story and the gist of it. And basically to say that, the sisters, they stuck together all their lives. And my aunt came back for her when she went, and when it was time for her to go. And I really do believe my aunt is the deciding factor here and coerced her and said, it is time. I really believe that in my heart. And, maybe people can say, sure, you went through the grieving process and this is a great way to process it all and give it a happy ending. And yeah, maybe they're right. But how can you overlook all of these coincidences that have occurred? I mean, did it have to be, and here's one other thing about that day. I'm nearly positive by the timing of things and when I talked to my aunt last, and when I got there with the groceries on the night that she died between 7 and 8 o'clock at night, and probably closer to 8, because I got there around 9:30, I think, 9:45. And so my mom died at 8 in the morning on November 13th. So they literally mirrored each other, one in the morning and one at night at almost the same times. I don't have, a time of death to prove that on my aunt, but I am pretty certain that that's within the time frame. And so I don't know how much more in sync you can get than that. And so another thing I wanted to share with you is something else unusual that happened to me. And basically, over the years, I'd be a little depressed about my mother's passing and my aunt's passing. I missed them. I missed them so much. A lot of my family and my aunts, all my other aunts and uncles were gone, and they were the last, and so I think about them a lot. And so I think it was around the year 2009, 2010, and it was November, and I was feeling kind of getting in the depressed mode of, their anniversaries this month, and I miss them so much, and how I should, I always tried to keep them in my heart and mind. And so I was cataloging books. I'm a librarian, and people who know me know that, and I'm a cataloger. And so I was cataloging a series of books that were basically a history of the various locales in Michigan, mostly in the metro Detroit area. And there was a book on graveyards, there's a book on city of Hamtramck, there's a book on Detroit, Highland Park, and there was different institutions like this one for Olympia Stadium. Now, I picked this book up basically because I said, Olympia Stadium. I went to a lot of concerts there. So I started to thumb through it, to look through it, and I happened across this page. I I didn't go to it right away, but it was one of the pages I just thumbed through, and I hit a dead stop. And this is the most peculiar thing. Now, my aunt and mom, they were not sports fans at all. And also, the Red Wings played at Olympia Stadium, the hockey team. And they weren't fans at all, so I don't know why. I'm positive, and I'll explain why in a minute. You can see in the corner over here, there are two women walking. I hope I've held that up right because I couldn't see. Holding a sign, and basically that's my aunt and mom. I'm convinced of it. Their names are not in here, but I'll tell you why I know it's them. Because I remember, now besides the fact it looks like them, I remember back in the 60s, 70s, I think, well, according to this, it would have been 1970, when something was going down, or maybe it was in 71 after the 69-70 season, that there was some kind of protest going on outside of Olympia Stadium related to, I think, the Red Wings management or the manager. I'm not sure. Maybe it was a firing. But at any rate, my mom told my uncle a story back then. I happened to be in the room at the time, and it just clicked that I remembered the story as I looked at the picture. I remembered that she said to him, "Oh my gosh, we're going to be in the paper." And this reporter came up to us and asked us if we would walk around in this group and hold the sign. They wanted to take our picture for the paper. She goes, "I don't know, crazy thing they were talking about, had us do," but we said, okay, and we held the sign. And so, thinking about my aunt, telling them in my mind how much I miss them, how much I still think about them, and they show up in that book that day. I don't know how to explain that. I can't. All I know is it's a gift. I feel so blessed and appreciative, that somebody out there is obviously looking out for me. Maybe it's a whole cadre of my family that's out there now, including my brother who passed last December. So that is my story. I finally ended it a half hour. I guarantee you a lot of my stories will not be this long, but this one had a lot of nuance to it that I wanted to make sure I shared with you so you could just understand how special this story is to me. And they were very special people as well. So I want to thank you all for your patience and listening to my story, and I'd be happy to, I'm just so excited to hear what you have to say about it. Love to hear your comments. Do tell me, what you think happened here, because I would love another perspective on this. And also, I would love to do a toast right now on November 13th to my mom and my aunt. This is my cranberry water combination. No wine today, but here's to you guys. I love you still. You will be always in my heart and on my mind. And with that, I'll close with a poem I wrote years ago, well, the year she passed, for my mother. And basically, it's about how we should consider living our lives. Seeing what she went through with Alzheimer's disease makes me think, make every moment count. So here's my poem. To my mother. The lessons learned, hopefully never to be forgotten, is to savor each and every moment, to grasp each one as tightly as I can before I let them go to the dark corners of my mind where memories like pictures may fade over time. I live for the present, where every breath I take is filled with wonder. May your moments be filled with wonder as well. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in December with another soul story. Take care, everybody, and see you on our Tarot for Today live streams Thursday nights from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Sundays from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Bye-bye.